So let's bring into the conversation on this very historical day in the life of our nation, one Nigerian that a lot of people will salute, not only on the national front, but globally. She served as a Minister of Environment in 2015 to 2016. She went on to becoming the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Ms. Amina Mohammed is live for us here on Channels Television. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us on our continuing coverage of the burial rites and the final moment of former President Muhammad Buhari. You certainly had moments with him. For you, recollecting those moments, what would you say is one of those that stood out significantly?
Thank you. Well, one of those moments was the decision for me to come to the United Nations as the Deputy Secretary General. We were sitting in a meeting in Marrakesh at the climate meeting, and Ban Ki-moon came over and said, we think that, the new Secretary General is going to ask you to come. And I said, no, it's not possible. I've come home and I'm serving. And then had a discussion with him to say that, I really needed his support. If they came to ask him, he shouldn't say yes. And he said, of course not. We need all our people back here in the team to serve Nigeria, and we need the best. So I felt very confident and left Marrakesh to India, which was my next trip. And in India, I got a call from the current Secretary General to ask if joining him as Deputy Secretary General. So I said with a lot of confidence, I can't, and I can't leave the service that I have, and I'm committed to President Muhammad Buhari's term. So he said, will you allow me to speak to him? I said, of course you can speak to him. I have to tell you, I was very confident that my president would say, no. So I left India, I went home, and they said the president was looking for me. I went and sat in front of him, and he talked to me for a long time about service. And I just thought, my God, I know where he's going. And at the end of it, after explaining why, these things mattered in terms of representing the country, he said, but of course the decision is yours. And in my head, I just thought, my goodness me, of course the decision is not mine. In our culture, when a man of that stature, one that you look to as a father, says things to you, that he wants the best. And so the only thing you can say is, yes, sir. But we often laughed about that, because when things were...
Ma'am, I think we lost your audio there. If you can punch the audio button. Not yet. Not yet. Okay, so Ms. Amina Mohammed there.
Yeah, we certainly hope to reconnect with her, but she was one of the very few women who served.
One of the brightest that we have.
Yes, in his cabinet, and it will be very interesting to get her perspective, on how he viewed women in leadership roles. But clearly, he rooted for her, and that's why he was able to push, for her to go on to the role that she's currently serving in today.
It might be a difficult, Mark, where when you have some of the best tools in your hands and you let it go.
Indeed.
Because Amina Mohammed certainly was one of the brightest stars of that cabinet.
Indeed.
And she left quite early. She didn't spend up to 2 years, just around a year or so in the cabinet before she left. And a lot of people thought that was going to be a tough decision. And maybe higher, well, there may not be a higher service than serving your nation, but then it's a service to the world. So a gift to the rest of the globe for Amina Mohammed to go on and do that. But then, in this moment, how significant do you think this kind of... You're a woman, you know what it means.
Well, let us pose the question to her. I'm sure it's the one who served with President Muhammad Buhari. Ma'am, it's really a pleasure to have. Thank you so much for attempting to reconnect. We're hoping that you can hear us clearer, and we hope we don't lose you again. But can you share with us what it was like for you serving with him in that cabinet, and also, listening much later to criticisms that he suffered as a result of not, will I say, putting a putting his foot down with the 35% affirmative action, which a lot of women had expected will come under his leadership?
Well, I mean, for me and the many women in his cabinet, I think we were given, as everyone else, the freedom to carry out our mandates. And I think as a woman, when you occupy a position, you open up that position to other women and to other issues. And it was incumbent upon all of us to fight for women's issues, and not just President Muhammad Buhari. I think he put us in very important roles in the cabinet. I'm one to see a cabinet 50-50. That is my aspiration and ideal. When it doesn't happen, you have to understand that he sits on the seat of leadership. He's elected. He knows the politics he has to play with in a country that perhaps is not there yet. Not there yet. But I can tell you that as women in the cabinet, we were always given the freedom to speak and to carry out our mandates, to have access to him when we had challenges. And so I didn't really see a better. And you can ask me. I've served many presidents. And I think that you know, he did the best he could with what he had. And he did a lot of delegation. I mean, Galadima said, you know, the Minister Suleiman Adamu, you know, that he talked about coming at such a later stage in his life. But what he did was max his team. And I think it was up to us to deliver. He was the leader, but we were the team. And I think that, you know, we have to take collective responsibility for any of the criticisms that come at him. They were ours also. He succeeded, we succeeded. He didn't do as well as people expected, and you know we are 240 million Nigerians. You know, we have to understand we'll never get it all right. Only God is perfect.
I'm in fact going to imagine that not only, why can a woman be the next Nigerian president? After, I mean, I'm just thinking aloud. Not only serving male leaders, but the big question here is the role Muhammad Buhari played in our nation, and perhaps one of the biggest lessons of leadership. What would you say is one legacy that you think that government bequeathed to the Nigerian people?
Well, I think first and foremost is that this is an officer and a gentleman who went through from military rule to a democracy. He dropped his uniform and he embraced democracy. I don't think he was always comfortable with politics, but what he did was try and try and try again. He believed in the rule of law, and he believed in a system that even if it was imperfect, he would keep trying until he got to where he needed to get to. And it was God's will that he would be the president at the time he was. But I want people to remember that, you know, before he got there, it was not just overnight. It was a struggle. And so therefore, the struggle of Nigeria is what I think he leaves, is that you don't give up on this country. It's the only one you have. And it is not perfect, but it's up to us to do that nation building. And he was, yes, you know, sometimes very excited and looked to see the potentials and pushed us. But it was also at times disappointed in our responses in terms of, you know, what were we going to do? Were we ready to go that last mile? And I think that that's what we have to think about, is that he gave it his all. Whenever he was asked to serve, he served. And we have to think about that. To serve is not an easy thing to do. It is a sacrifice, enormous sacrifice to his wife, to his children, to his family, and to his lifestyle. Because remember, he was also not a person who was always out there. He was very much one that kept his own counsel and a very small, you know, gathering of trusted friends and family. So many sacrifices. It is a long haul, believing in the rule of law. And last but not least, he stood for the courage of his conviction. I didn't see him ever waver in the time that I had the honor of knowing him and serving him and serving the country. He really stuck to the courage of his convictions. And that is exactly that, courage and conviction.
Please stay with us for a moment. We'll take a quick break, and hopefully we'll be able to adjust the setting and the orientation of your screen, because we do have so much more to get out of you on this day. We'll be right back in our continued coverage of the burial and the final moment in Daura, when the late former President Muhammad Buhari, his body will be committed to Mother Earth. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us in this continuing coverage of the final moment of the burial of the late former president, Muhammad Buhari. I would let you know that we have our eyes at the airport. The president is due, the former president's body is due to arrive at the Yaradua International Airport in Katsina in the last hour. By give and take, this should not take another further minute when we get the news that his body has arrived, and we have our eyes live in Daura, where the final rites will be done. The President, Bola Tinubu, is expected to officially receive the body from the airport and onward movement to Daura, where the final burial rites will be conducted. We've been showing you pictures, live pictures from there. But let's quickly get a final thought with the 5th Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations and former Nigerian Minister of Environment, who served under the Buhari administration, got the push and the support of the late former president to serve in that capacity. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. In all of this, right, our nation is in transition. Transition to good governance, transition to development, transition to meeting the aspirations of the Nigerian people. If you look at it on the global stage, the world is seeing a lot of troubles, wars here and there, and you are right in the middle of it. And we are thinking of how to navigate. What would you say that the Buhari administration has laid as a legacy to help Nigeria navigate this process, and perhaps what the Nigerian people need to put their minds to and work on?
Well, I think you're right. The global tensions that we see today are affecting everyone. But I think that what we did in Buhari's time was to set an agenda that really did Nigeria first a long time ago. And to be very clear about our vision, to be clear that this is about building our nations and the interests of our people, but acknowledging that this is in a global context. And I think what you will see is a coming together today of Nigerians for Nigeria, whether they're in the country or they're outside of the country. And kudos to the many colleagues that I have outside in the diaspora who are doing incredibly well, whether in the UN, you mentioned earlier our former Minister of Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, as the WTO head, but there are many more in businesses. There are many more in diaspora. There are incredible Nigerians young Nigerians who have come into the tech space. And so I think what we have shown is that we have the ability to bring everyone home and to do this better. And those foundations really have been laid over time. But in Buhari's time, I think, you really did see everyone rolling up their sleeves and trying to do something in an incredibly difficult context. You remember when we first came in, the security situation in the country was quite incredible. We had parts of our country taken over, as did Mali a few months ago, and reclaimed that. Yes, we have not resolved the problem of security yet, but the efforts that continue to be made don't slide. So on very many different levels, the connection with the global, with the regional as well, the African Union. Of course, we've had our challenges with ECOWAS, but I think it's a sign of the times. And if I was to say anything, we are losing leaders who have convictions, who have a set of values that they hold on to very tightly. And we need them, because when we see the situation in Gaza, when we see the situation in Sudan, when we see the situation in Ukraine, where agreements to hold together the world with a set of values and principles are being eroded, I think that we should remember in late President Muhammad Buhari when he stood for that, and we continue to support.
My colleague Mark would like to ask you the last question, but pardon me, I'm not wanting to put you on the spot, but I do know that when you had a sit down with the late former President Muhammad Buhari about your assignment at the United Nations, is something perhaps that you didn't see coming. You were not expecting it as much. Maybe someday, maybe in the nearest moment, do you think you might want to take up the task of coming home and playing maybe a bigger role, like becoming Nigeria's president? Has this come to your mind?
No, no, it hasn't. I'm always about service, but I will tell you that we used to laugh about this when I asked a number of our former leaders, that question is often put to me. Look, I believe that I am a candidate that is appointable and not electable at this stage in my life.
Don't think so. Don't be quick to judgment.
No,
don't be quick to judgment.
I tell you what I believe. What God has in store for me is different. But what I believe is that I have an enormous amount of experience, exposure, and the honor of serving in different capacities that I can bring back. And I'd like to think that what I'm doing is investing that in the young people of our country. They have great expectations. They deserve for us to get behind them with their energy, their vision. Let's use our experience and our wisdom to push them forward. So I'm an intergenerational person right now, and I would be a great campaign manager for another woman president in Nigeria.
Martha has the placard on behalf of the women.
Yes, I have. My placard is for you, Sheung. But
right.
Never mind. I'm not going to present it now. Ma'am, I'm just going to, thank you, because I know that we have taken a little more than you had planned to give us with your time. But, opportunities like this with you are so rare. And thank you so much for indulging us, more or less, on this occasion. I'm just going to ask you very quickly, though, because you've expressed very clearly that you are an advocate for 50-50, which we're still very far from. I do not know how you intend to push that in our country where, we're still so far away from what it is that it ought to be when we're talking about women in leadership. We're still very far from even the goals that we have set for ourselves. What would you be saying to them, especially on the occasion of the funeral rites of President Muhammad Buhari?
Well, this is about our principles, about our values, and the right for women to be side by side with men. There is no bird that flies on one wing, and we have an eagle, and right now it's flying on half a wing. So I would say to the parliament, I would say to our societies, our men, that we're not asking for numbers. We're asking for the capacities and the capabilities of women to help us build our nation. And it's long overdue. It's long overdue. In the United Nations, we came in, half our management are women, and half the people that represent the United Nations in the field are now women. So it is possible to do. Where there's a will, there's a way, but it does need a collective effort. We cannot leave people thinking that women don't deserve to be in a position of nation building. And I think that right has not yet been given to us, and it is one that we'll continue to struggle for.
Well, ma'am, we hope to continue to engage with you. We have to thank you so much for sharing your time with us this afternoon. We've been speaking with the Deputy UN Secretary General Amina Mohammed, who also served with President Muhammad Buhari in his first tenure as President of Nigeria. Thank you so much for speaking with us, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.